Hello, crafty viewers. We are back again with some more Halloween cards. And for today's card, we have this little pop-up box card, which just turned out adorable. So for this card, all of this came from digital papers that I bought online from the people who make Echo Park and Carta Bella papers. They actually have a digital website for digital papers that is called Snap Click Supply, and I'll put that on our blog post, and you can link to the blog post through the show notes down below. And I make heavy use of their digital papers. I make planners out of it, and it comes in very handy when you need a certain size of paper for a card. Everything was printed out on a Brother color laser jet that I bought. I got tired of buying ink refills for my Epson inkjet, and for just a little bit more than a couple sets of refills, I got an entire laser printer that prints up beautifully, high resolution, and goes forever and ever and ever without having to refill any of the toner. Now the toner will be expensive when I refill it, but you get like 6,000 pages or something out of it, so I can live with that. So let's get started. For this card, I used some papers from 3 different sets of paper. This is the Carta Bella Happy Halloween set, and used several of the pieces from this. And you can see I got some tombstones, the flying witch, this guy is pretty funny. The mummy, didn't use the bats. This little girl, she came, I believe, from the same set. Little witch, little ghost. Did not use the tree, but you can see that there's all sorts of different elements in that Happy Halloween set. This paper is pretty awesome. That's used on the inside of the card. There's a bunch of cut aparts. This I used for the background of the card, and how easy is that? Boom, you got a ready-made background. Now I love the Carta Bella paper sets that have the big giant scene like this, and so I wanted to find a way to get that worked into something, and this card was the perfect place to use that. You'll see where I put that. Did not use that. This actually came from, I believe this was Echo Park's Haunted, maybe. A different paper set. I have quite a few of them. And I thought that tree was pretty awesome too. I like that better than the tree that was in the Happy Halloween set. This also came from a different paper set. This came from a paper set called Trick or Treat, and that you see is what's on the outside here. This little guy, he's running for his life. These trick-or-treaters, well, they're trying to run away too. And there's that scary house in the background that they just have to get away from. So let's see what they're up to on the card. I closed the card up using some ribbon that I got at Michael's a couple years back. I've had it in my stash, and I thought that the color just went perfectly with this. This card can open in either direction. I do decorate both sides of my cards. And it was a dark and scary night in the graveyard while the kids were out trick-or-treating. So this has all sorts of stuff going on in it. You can see that this is effectively 4 different layers plus the back. And let's start from the outside and work our way in. This is a Lawn Fawn die, Halloween fence die, and I used that to enclose everybody into the graveyard where all the kids were going trick-or-treating at the scary house. Going up a little bit further, you can see that we have the pillars. The second layer is where we have the little witch and the little boy running away, and they're trying to get to the entrance here. Third layer, we have Mummy chasing after this little ghost guy, and I don't think he realizes, but he's about to run into the fence there. He's not going to get away. The layer behind that, we have the little witch walking around in the graveyard and stuck on a piece of the cellophane that I used from my laminator sheet that I laminated to itself. It also makes perfect little box card props. So little ghost guy, he's a lot smaller than he was in the picture that I showed from the set that I used, but he's coming up out of the tombstone. And then in the back, we got the scary house, and way in the back, you can see that this is set apparently up on a hill overlooking the town where all the trick-or-treaters are. Now, a tip, if you're going to enclose things within a fence, I highly recommend off the bottom of the die, because the bottom does not cut, it just cuts each of the pieces of this fence post, and you can have it be as deep as you want. I only had like a 1/4 inch. I, in hindsight, would have probably made that about a 1/2 inch. It would have stuck on a little bit better. Tip number 1. Tip number 2 is I leave the card completely open, and I make up each of the different layers before I put it in. So a lot of people will put the little cross pieces in and then add stuff to it, and they're trying to jam their fingers in between to get stuff glued in and stuff. I don't do that. I glue everything that I want all together, and then I glue the completed cross pieces in. And I would, in hindsight, have put the fence in and then put the cross pieces in, because for the first card that I made, before I figured that out, it was kind of hard to get this all jammed in. So because these are cards for hospitalized kids, and that's a nationwide organization, they send cards everywhere, highly likely that there will not be 2 kids in the same hospital comparing cards, so they'll never know that one ended up much different than the other. The other thing that I did for each of these panels was I actually created the panel in the Silhouette Design Studio software. It's free software. It's very easy to lay stuff out digitally. And so I just created a black rectangle, the size that I wanted to go across the body of this, and I then positioned each of the figures that I wanted on each panel and welded them together, or grouped them together, so that when I printed it out and put it into my brother's Scan and Cut, it actually cut the whole thing for me all out, where I didn't have to do any fussy cutting, and I didn't have to pretty much do anything. The machine did all the work. It was really, really awesome. So that's my third tip, is that instead of fiddling around with stuff that you have stamped and colored and everything and try to glue together, you can also consider using digital elements like this. I did each different layer and then kind of set them all together in the software, so that I could then see, as you're looking at it from this angle, where is this going to line up relative to the tree, relative to Mummy? Where are these kids running? Do I need to move them left or right? I actually had another tombstone here, but it blocked the house, so that got removed. And that gave me a lot of flexibility to arrange stuff visually before I even printed or glued anything. So that is our little box card. Absolutely love this background. The little witch here, she is propped up on a black dimensional that I also got from Stampin' Up. And I love the fact that you can't see that. And that's a part of the holiday catalog, and so they'll only be around until the end of the year. But these are dimensionals that come in pieces that are about a 1/2 inch wide, and then some that come in about 3/16 of an inch wide. 2 different sizes, and it's really nice because then you can't see them when you have stuff where you're trying to hide it. So the third, or the very last thing that I did in creating this was I did not attach the final corner of the box. So I had the card open, I attached each of the layers on one side using glue, and then closed it, and then I used glue on this side and held it down after I had everything in there and everything arranged and everything done. It was the very last thing that I did, was closed it up, and I just used a piece of black craft paper, and instead of using a die set, I actually just cut this at 1 1/4 inches, and then this is, I believe, 4 1/4 inches wide. So that gives us 5 1/2, and then we have 4 1/4. So this is just one vertical cut sheet of paper that I then figured out how wide do I want to make it and how tall do I want to make it. And I do have the set of box card dies from Lawn Fawn, but the box cards that they make are little tiny squares. And I could have never gotten as much stuff into it that I wanted to put into it like this if I had a little tiny square. So I like using my trimmer and cutting the stuff myself, and I will put the diagram for the cut marks on our blog post, so you can check that out. Now, to finish off the back, Cards for Hospitalized Kids recommends that you have a greeting on your cards, that you sign your cards, and this was a paper artsy stamp set that I got probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I just thought that the sentiment was hilarious. Brush up your brooms, polish your bats, clean your fangs, and sparkle your cats. I just have an image of sparkly cats running around. And just finished off the bottom with a little bit of washi tape. I also had another paper artsy stamp set that had this spider web in it, and I thought that would be perfect in the background. This is Fog Ink by, I believe, Simon Says Stamp, maybe? And it's a very, very light gray. Almost invisible. It was just subtle enough that you could have the spider web in the background and still see the print up front. So that is our third Halloween card. I have a couple more Halloween cards coming, and I will be sharing those shortly. Thanks, and have a great day. Bye-bye.